You know, I've had the incredible privilege of speaking in dozens of churches in all denominations across Canada over the past couple of decades with my work with the Voice of the Martyrs. And as a result, I've met many pastors, church leaders, ministry people. Many of them, it's been a great honor to know them, and they love serving Jesus. But at times their zeal turns into frustration and hurt. A number of these people are leaving ministry and often very discouraged. Pastor Sam Nikkel is trying to help pastors, church leaders, and those serving in God's kingdom get emotionally healthy and spiritually healthy as well in serving Jesus. Sam is with an organization in Edmonton, the E P Wahl Centre at Taylor Seminary, the Healthy Pastor Initiative. Sam, welcome to 100 Huntley Street.
Thank you, Greg. Great to be here.
Now, before we talk about what the work you're doing with pastors and trying and church leaders, and actually it could be business people as well, you had a burnout. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Greg, every workplace has its hidden hazards, and this is no exception for pastoral ministry. I had a clear call into ministry in my early 20s, and had also observed actually with my father, who was in ministry in a rural church in Manitoba. As a little boy, I remember him seeing how stressed he was in his role, and thinking as a little boy, that pastoral role is really, really difficult. 3 of my brothers have gone into ministry, and then I followed them and have completed 40 years of ministries, and I'm well aware of the hazards and the glory that there is in ministry.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
No, I'm going to say it was a mixed bag. Now, you were with the Navigators, and
That's
many
right.
of us know that, working on universities. With your work, your fundraising, there's the spiritual warfare that's going on. Is that what kind of led to your burnout at around 50?
Yeah. Well, when I was serving wholeheartedly, and one of the things that I say when I talk about my own narrative is that I crash on a pathway of obedience, not on the pathway of disobedience. There are those who have sort of shipwrecks in their spiritual journey because of bad choices that they make. But there are others who work wholeheartedly, have given themselves to the Lord's work with all their might, but then run out of emotional, physical energy. And that was the case for me. The various demands of ministry that came my way, particularly in my 40s, I would say, Greg, resulted in both an emotional and a physical burnout at age 50.
So when we're talking about pastors, particularly right now, they're trying to do many things. I've heard like 16 different kinds of activities all at once. You know, so it's not just preaching on Sunday, but there's all the other things. Do you think there's a lot of people that are in ministry, they want to serve the Lord, but they're going maybe beyond their gifting and their expertise and training?
There are huge demands for those who are in ministries. And what I'm going to say is that the hazards in ministry, some of them come from the outside in, and it's the expectations of people, it's the multi-demands of the role, but there's also a contribution to burnout that comes from the inside of that person that is called. They may be called, they may understand that the Lord has invited them to be part of what He is already doing, but then there may be a lack of boundaries, for instance, that they might have, and that they're actually over-functioning in their roles. And as a result of this lack of rhythm of rest and work, there's just a depletion of their energy.
Like the statistics are something like 2,000 a month in the United States, and I'm sure percentage-wise the same in Canada. Many pastors say that because they're in ministry, their marriages are struggling. There's financial things. And again, I know that many people watching our broadcast, business people, they're struggling as well. How do we, look at something like that and say, okay, well, there's something going wrong here. How do we get healthy?
How do we get healthy? Terrific question. I think that what I'm going to say is that the hazards that ministers experience, it's not unique necessarily to their vocation. I said that there are hidden hazards in any workplace. Sure. And the practices of health and wellness are fully transferable from for a person who's in ministry to a person who's not in ministry. And the number one thing is a discernment of healthy boundaries. When we understand that as human beings, we need rest, we need to play, and we need to work. And so there needs to be a good rhythm and a cadence to our life where we give ourselves permission to have boundaries and to move away. The organization and the church will never help you with your boundaries. There's always the next phone call, there's always the next email, there's always the next text. inviting you to dive in and help and to serve. And because pastors are doing this for the Lord, they have a hard time saying, listen, I need to give myself permission to rest. I need to give myself permission to recreate and to stay healthy in my inner world.
Okay, when we come back, I want to talk more about this trying to stay healthy, because I'm one of those guys that, hey, I'm serving Jesus, I'm sacrificing for the kingdom of God, but I was heading through a burnout too. That's actually how Sam and I met. So we're going to take a break. We'll come back with more of Sam Nikkel on 100 Huntley Street. Pastor Sam Nikkel, the E P Wahl Centre, Taylor Seminary in Edmonton, Alberta. Now, Sam, we're talking about boundaries, having rest, giving yourself permission to play. I have finally, after all these years, learned that. Why does it take us so long to come to that realization?
I think one of the key things here, Greg, is an understanding of our identity. I think all of us need to have permission to understand that God has created us as image bearers, and that God is actually the one who's doing the work. It's in His hands. He invites us to be a part of it, but our identity is in our sonship with God. We are children of God, and for many of us, we get our worth out of our performance. So if it's a job well done, we're feeling good about ourselves, and we think God's smiling. But the thing is that God loves us just the way we are. And so understanding our identity as God's children is what gives us the opportunity and the permission to say, I can step back and God will take care of things.
It's okay to go work out. It's okay to take a Sabbath day off, you know, just to relax, be with the Lord. I mean, those are things that we see in the Bible. I mean, Jesus Himself went away. So why do we think, especially us guys, that we can somehow short-circuit it and do our own thing?
Right. The rhythm, I'm glad you mentioned Sabbath, because it's really important for us not only to have a daily rhythm where we are replenishing our inner world, but also on a weekly rhythm where we take that time where it's not a Sabbath from life, but it's a Sabbath from work, where we allow ourselves to read, recreate, and do those things that replenish our inner world. Burnout is as a result of depletion. And so when we work and output, but we don't replenish the inner world, that's where that burnout happens. And Sabbath is a key practice and a discipline that helps us to restore and for the Lord to restore our inner world.
And it's not just in Christianity. You know, the idea of Sabbath or taking a day off. You even hear it now from secular psychologists, and that's saying you got to take some time. You know, whether you're the president or the prime minister, leading a business, being at home, which I know for moms is sometimes not easy. That's why dads are there, hopefully, or family members to help out, right?
Very much. I recently read a book was about strategic pause, and it wasn't a faith-based book, but it introduced this idea that as we output and as we are on sort of work mode, we need to come out of that and take a pause and give ourselves a rest in order for our emotions and our minds and our bodies and our spirits to recreate. And what I'm going to say, sometimes people conclude that when they're burnout that it's necessarily a spiritual problem, particularly if it's a pastor. And what I'm going to say is that what the studies are showing is that it's actually generally, it's emotional depletion, it's physical depletion, and it's the result of the body actually being on high demand for a long period of time, and then that is what contributes then for that person to be able to not function.
You go, crash.
Crash.
What are you seeing at the E P Wahl Centre, Taylor Seminary in Edmonton? Pastors are coming to you, Christian leaders. What are you seeing?
Well, the first thing, Greg, is that we bring this conversation forward so that everybody understands the pastors are human, just like the rest of us. We need boundaries. And cultivating an awareness about the hazards in ministry is the first step that we take. Helping them to understand that they need to take care of themselves. And then secondly, once we cultivate the awareness, we also introduce the practices that they need to instill, the rhythms, the cadence of their life. So as I said, there's room for rest, there's room for work, and there's room for play and recreation.
And the key is you have to give yourself permission.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have a great wife, and she's for years said, you need to dial back sometimes, and you don't, then the result is a burnout. And oftentimes pastors will take, or Christian leaders, or even in the business world, take a time away they analyze kind of how things are going, and then they often leave the ministry. I mean, we talked about the high numbers leaving. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how do they do that? And maybe there's somebody watching today, they think, or their pastor's in trouble. How do they connect with you, Sam?
First of all, what I was going to say is that there's hope. There's hope. And often in these dark times, we learn the deepest lessons about God. And they can contact me by getting to the Taylor Seminary website and go to the E P Wahl Centre, which is the Centre for Lifelong Learning at Taylor Seminary. And there's a cascading down there, different ways, programs, pathways that they can plug into. And also there's a spot there for them to be in touch with me.
Okay, you can just Google Taylor Seminary in Edmonton. Sam, thank you for the great work that you're doing for these precious pastors, Christian leaders, people, even in the business world, that are dealing with burnout or struggle, and we're so appreciative of what you're doing. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you for having me, Greg.
Okay, we'll be back with more of 100 Huntley Street after this.